Sub-Commander Creelthak stood before the War Council of the Valerian Empire, his battle-scarred carapace still bearing the marks of plasma burns and kinetic impact craters. The massive amphitheater buzzed with the clicks and hums of a dozen different species, all unified under the banner of galactic conquest. But today, their attention was focused on him, the sole survivor of Battle Group Talon's encounter with the humans of Sol 3. "Esteemed Council," Creelthak began, his voice resonating through the chamber's acoustic enhancers, "I stand before you with a warning that may determine the fate of our empire." Fleet Admiral Zixandra, a towering crystalline being whose body reflected the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns, leaned forward. "Sub-Commander, your preliminary report was. Please elaborate on your encounter with these humans." Creelthak's mandibles clicked nervously. 3 weeks had passed since the disaster at the edge of the Sol system, and still, no one would believe him. "Admiral, with respect, my previous reports contain no exaggerations. The humans are not what our intelligence suggested. According to our xenobiological surveys," interjected Science Coordinator Velth, a slug-like Morvian, whose eye stalks swayed with skepticism, "humans are a primitive species, soft-bodied, single-hearted, with limited natural weaponry. They've barely achieved faster than light travel. How could such creatures pose a threat to our battle group?" Creelthak's claws scraped against the metal podium. "That was our mistake. We saw their biological limitations and assumed weakness. We were catastrophically wrong." The amphitheater erupted in chittering laughter from several species. Admiral Zixandra raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "Continue, Sub-Commander." "Our attack began at 347 Standard Time," Creelthak recalled, his voice growing distant. 15 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and 200 fighters against their small colonial fleet. We expected swift victory. The humans had perhaps 20 vessels, mostly converted civilian ships with improvised armor plating. "Surely our superior firepower," began General Thakmor of the reptilian Saurian Guard. "Our firepower was superior," Creelthak interrupted, "but it didn't matter. The humans fought like nothing I've ever encountered in 30 years of warfare." He activated the holographic display, showing tactical recordings from the battle. The assembled council watched as massive Valerian dreadnoughts engaged the smaller human vessels. "Watch carefully," Creelthak commanded. "Here, the human vessel, Indomitable, a converted cargo hauler, takes direct hits from 3 plasma batteries. Any normal ship would be vaporized." The hologram showed the human ship, its hull glowing white-hot from the impacts, continuing to fire as atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches. "Impossible," whispered Coordinator Velth. "No ship can maintain structural integrity under such damage." "The humans reinforced their hulls with a metal they call steel," Creelthak explained. "Primitive by our standards, but they layer it so thick in such redundant patterns that their ships become nearly indestructible. They don't build elegant vessels, they build tanks that fly." The hologram continued, showing the Indomitable ramming a Valerian cruiser at full speed. "They rammed us," Creelthak said, his voice filled with disbelief even weeks later. "Multiple ships, deliberately ramming our vessels. They call it kinetic warfare. Their captains sacrifice their own ships to destroy ours, and they do it with enthusiasm." Admiral Zixandra's prismatic body flickered. Surely this was desperation, not strategy. "No, Admiral. It was doctrine." Creelthak switched to another recording. "This is the human flagship Defiance. Watch their response when we target their medical vessels." The council watched as Valerian fighters strafe ships clearly marked with medical symbols. Immediately, every human vessel in the engagement zone redirected fire toward the attackers. They prioritize protecting their wounded above tactical advantage, Creelthak observed. But this isn't weakness, it's what makes them dangerous. Each human fights not just for themselves, but for every other human. They view attacks on their medics, their civilians, their wounded as personal affronts, requiring immediate vengeance. General Tharkmore snorted. Emotional warfare. Hardly. Efficient? Krell Thark's voice rose. General, emotion made them unstoppable. When we destroyed their medical ship Mercy, the remaining human forces entered what they call berserker mode. They stopped following conventional tactics entirely. The hologram showed the final phase of the battle. Human ships, many barely functioning, pressed attacks against vastly superior Valerian forces with suicidal determination. This human captain, Krulthak, pointed to a specific vessel. The last stand, his ship was dead in space. No power, no weapons, life support failing. He used his remaining maneuvering thrusters to position his ship between our flagship and their evacuation transports. And he detonated his reactor core when we got within range. Took out our flagship and 2 escort cruisers. Krulthak's voice dropped to a whisper. His final transmission was, "Tell my daughter, I kept my promise." Silence filled the amphitheater. Most species surrender when losses reach 15%, Kreltha continued. At 30%, even our most fanatical allies break. The humans fought until 93% casualties. They only stopped because they had physically run out of ships. Science coordinator Velsai Stokes drooped. But surely, their ground forces are worse, Krulthak cut him off. I've read the reports from the hegemony's attempted invasion of their colony, World New Sparta. Humans in close combat are nightmare incarnate. They continue fighting with injuries that would kill most species. They use their own blood as psychological warfare. There are documented cases of humans fighting effectively after losing limbs. Admiral Zixandra's form had dimmed considerably. What are you recommending, Subcommander? Avoid Sol System at all costs, Krulthak said firmly. Classify humans as a Class XII extinction threat. These aren't just another primitive species to be conquered. They're apex predators who have turned warfare into an art form. Preposterous, General Tharkmore declared. One species cannot threaten the entire empire. Krell Thark pulled up the final image, a tactical display showing human expansion since first contact. Red dots indicating human colonies spread across dozens of systems. General, in the 6 months since our defeat, human territory has expanded by 40%. They're not just building colonies, they're building fortresses. They've already begun reverse engineering our technology, improving it with their characteristic redundancy and overkill philosophy. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Council members, I've fought the crystalline hives, the machine collective, and the void hunters. None of them scared me. The humans terrify me, not because they're stronger or smarter, but because they never, ever stop. They make friends of their enemies and weapons of their tools. They're coming, and when they arrive, they'll do so with overwhelming force and absolute conviction. The council chamber fell silent again. Finally, Admiral Zixandra spoke. Thank you, Subcommander. We'll consider your recommendations. As Krelthak left the chamber, he heard the beginning of the next agenda item, proposal for expanded military operations in the Sol sector. He closed his eyes in despair. They still didn't understand. Soon, they would learn what he had discovered in that terrible battle. Humans didn't just fight wars. They perfected them.